Okay, I'm going over the tools you need for um, for nut work, for string nut work on guitars. Okay, I just got done tweaking in my nut, and I finally got it dialed in. Okay, and just for a sound example, I just took my guitar, my electric guitar, acoustically. Um, Credits to Lifeson. This is a it's an old Rush song that I use when I check my nuts. Yeah. And you hear how that nothing sounds off there. It's those open. That's mostly open chords. Mostly open chords. Okay, how do you do that? How is it that you know you get inexpensive guitars? This is where most of the problems are. Okay, there's standard setup stuff, but nobody really messes with this because it's really tweaky. Okay, it's really tweaky. But the thing is, nut blanks are cheap. Okay, and yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, you might end up having to get two or three nut blanks, and then it starts costing you something. But by the time you nail one, you know what you're doing, and that is a valuable skill. Okay, to be able to set a nut, tweak it in, and get it sounding like that open on the open chords. And people, they think that that's all it is. That's a good way to check it. If you play an open, if you tune all your strings and you play an open chord, it sounds like poop. Okay, this is the problem. Okay, but it's not just that. Okay, if say on this string you fret this, okay, and it's flat, that means all the strings on that, all the notes on that string are flat because you're tuning open, right? That's what it is. So, people don't realize how if you have a good, well set nut and properly tweaked in and all that stuff, it can make make the difference. It can make a freaking cheap guitar sound like a professional guitar, and it's just that. Okay, but it's not just that because it's tricky stuff. The first tool you got to have, the most important tool, okay, to tweaking the nut on a guitar, the string nut, is a good tuner, a good electronic tuner, so you can actually see, because you're trying to get it absolutely perfect when it's fretted at the first fret. Okay, now there's a lot of stuff that has to come before you go to the nut. In fact, I go round robin on stuff, and I'll work on the nut for a little while, and then I'll go back and through the whole thing, and then I'll work a little bit, get it a little bit closer, and then work on it a little bit more. But the thing is this, you learn this first. You learn to set your intonation first because that gives you an idea of what you're doing at the nut in a way. Okay, you got the ups, the up and down. You got your up and down. You got your forward and backward. Okay, and you're trying to get that 12th fret note to be an exact octave higher than the open string. Okay, but yeah, your frets. You got to do your frets levels and all that stuff. I can go through some of my tools that I use for that. I mean, this was my tool of choice for a long time, the Hosco. And if you're really on a budget and you're a glutton for punishment, or you just want to learn to do traditional fretwork, you know, this is a good file. This thing will cut stainless. In fact, it got me out of a bind. I use it for dressing the ends of frets now. I still use it, so I still use it. You know, because I don't want to wear out my grits on my Fret Maestro files. You know, if I'm just dressing the end of a file, I'll use this. Okay, this is my old go-to. You know, but that's like you have to have a sanding beam and a Sharpie, and then you run over this and you bring it down that Sharpie line down to just a hair. You know, it's a lot of work, and it's, anyways, I got a Fret Maestro. Okay, I'm pretty happy. I'm really happy with the results I got with this. I could go on and on. It's really good, but this can't be your only tool. Okay, but the good thing is, okay, you can get something like this. Okay, it's a fretboard level, or fretboard straight edge. You can get that, and one of these fret rocker. I call it a Geiger counter, and a whole bunch of these things here, radius gauges. Okay, on Amazon for cheap. You look for a package of guitar setup tools, you know, and you'll see this thing, this right here, fret rocker, Geiger counter. That's the thing. You still, even if you have a Fret Maestro, you still need this. Even if you have a Fret Maestro, you still need this. Even if you have a Fret Maestro, you still need this to use this. Okay. So, you know, I got the 12. I got a 12-inch radius fingerboard, so I got the 12-inch kit. I got the Maestro itself. I got the file that's in here, and the two other files here, two other files, and then this, the all-important figuring out where you're at thingy. And you know, you get your frets down there. You do your intonation back here, and you're back and forth between this and this. After that, between the bridge and the nut, back and forth. Okay, you dial this in. This, you're hardly doing anything. Okay, it's really tweaky. But I'm gonna explain the tools I use. Okay, to get this thing sounding like a professional guitar. Okay, because that is worth something. Okay, now, you know, a lot of Luthers will talk 64ths. Everything's 64ths, right? You get a feeler gauge set. I'm talking thousandths of an inch, okay? So you know where you're at all the time. You can measure things with this more accurately with a feeler gauge set. The other thing, a caliper, a dial caliper. Get a dial caliper. Okay, you can get a cheap, this is an 8. Okay, you can get a cheap 6 or a 4, you know, for a reasonable price. Okay, this is invaluable. Okay, being able to measure. Okay, because you can't see what you're doing. Okay, you can't see the changes you're making on the nut. You have to measure them with something that can tell you, you know, yeah, you can't see 3/1000ths of an inch. You can't feel 3/1000ths of an inch. You know, you have to have tools, okay? Measuring tools. That's important. And the other measuring tool is that tuner. You got to have a precision tuner so you can see exact, because you're going for exact. Okay, you always go for exact. Garbage in, garbage out. You know the saying. Okay, you go for exact. Now, working on the nut. Okay, these are my primary tools. I don't have my one because I can't find my fret saw. Okay, but I use my fret saw for a file. Now you can use a saw for a file. You drag the blade like sideways like this. You know, like you're just grazing on the side of the teeth, and you kind of use it as you're kind of like filing with it. This is the thing is, some inexpensive guitars, the nuts are usually like some sort of exact or just a touch closer to the bridge, just a hair closer to the bridge, which is what you want, you know, which is why, you know, more guitar manufacturers are starting to adopt that, where they're not running it mathematically perfect like a fret. They're bringing it this way a little bit. Okay, because when you push down the string, it goes sharp. Okay, so you're basically, moving the nut this way to flat it out a bit, so that by the time it gets down to the fret, it's on. Okay, now lowering the slot in the, lowering the string closer to the fretboard in the slot makes this go flat compared to what it was. Okay, so you're going more flat as you're dropping it down in there. Okay, now if it's actually flat compared to the open string, it's not a semitone, an exact semitone up, it's not a semitone, an ascent or two, it's actually flat, then there's nothing you can do. And this is why I'm bringing up the fret saw and using that as a file. Because generally what I do, okay, I use the Graphtec nuts. The Graphtec nuts are nice, they're easy to work. Get the pre-slotted ones, don't get a nut blank unless you really want to hurt yourself. I mean, it won't hurt yourself. It just takes, that's another skill that you have to acquire, is actually slotting a nut. I would get the pre-slotted one. I would get the closest one that you can get for your guitar that's designed for your string spacing and your neck width, and and maybe get one that's a little bit fatter this way, okay, than your nut slot. Okay, now what I do is I took my old nut out. Okay, I got this blank. This is my first blank. I'm good at it. Okay, so this is my first try. You can take another try. You try it once. If you screw up, you get another one. You try again. You keep going. Okay, until you get it. Because that's important. You'll be glad you did. So I take my fret saw and I take off, like say this nut isn't in here and there's a fret slot there. I mean a nut slot there. Okay, I'm filing on that side towards the first fret of the nut slot, inside of the nut slot, to move that forward edge forward. Okay, so that, because you have to sand these down. Another good thing to have is like a surface plate. You put some sticky sandpaper on there and you sand the nut down, and you use this and you measure. Okay, but now here's the other thing. You can't see your progress unless you measure across the slot. So you can take this thing, this side of the caliper. Wait, I gotta get it so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, this side of the caliper, you can use that to measure the inside of the nut slot. Okay, but so you have a visual reference before you start filing the nut slot. Figure, okay, I'm gonna take it forward 30. I'm gonna take the forward, or the bridge side, the fret side edge of that nut slot towards the first fret, like 30 thousandths. Okay, that's a good starting point. You take it 30 thousandths. So you set this up for 30 thousandths off 0. Okay, and that's where it goes from 0. You zero it, and you take this thing, the draw, and you put that, your shirt in between there, and you kind of squeeze on it a little bit and pull out your shirt. It'll clean it off. You go like this. You zero it with this thing. You learn how to zero it. You loosen this thing. You turn this thing. You zero it. Tighten it back up. Then there'll be a lock nut on this side. And you pull it out till it gets to 30. You go from 0 to 30. Okay? And you lock this down. And then you take this edge here. This thing here. Okay? Or wait, no. You get this. You get that so it's in the nut slot. You get the nut slot like this, and like this is the width of the nut slot. Okay, and then you go an extra 30 thousandths. Okay, you bring it out 30 thousandths. Then you lock it down. Then you take this along the back side. This one here. Along the back side of the nut, as you see, and you use the other side as a scribe, and you make a scribe mark. Okay, across it. Then you have a visual reference. You take that fret saw and you use it like a file, and you're just dressing that up, and you're trying to get to that line. You want to keep it kind of square, so go back to this again and check that it's, you're not getting out. Okay, but you move that nut forward, okay, because you're going to probably use a Graphtec or a bone or something you can file. It's going to be something other than some cast plastic thing. Okay, you're going to get a nut, you're going to get a decent one. Okay, maybe it's brass, whatever. You know, I like the graphite ones. Anyways, you get that new nut in there. And when you glue in a nut, you only do it if you have to. Okay, if your string deflection up here makes it so that you can just set the nut there and it's fine, it doesn't move. Okay, and you can do work on it, then don't freaking screw with it. If the string tension is pulling it off one direction or the other, then get it centered and just put one little drop of super glue on one side. Okay, because you want to be able to knock it back out. Okay, just a little drop. Just take a toothpick, get a little drop of stuff on there, and just get a little drop on there. Maybe one little drop on the other side if that isn't holding. But that's it. Okay, just a tiny bit of super glue just to hold it in place. Okay, that's it. Because you want to be able to get it back out. See, if you get your nut tweaked in perfect, then by all means, then you can come right in here, okay, right in here, back here, okay, and you turn the guitar up like this so the super glue runs down there and just freaking run a bead right across the whole back of it, okay, there. But it's perfect, right? It's perfect, and you know you're not going to take it out of there anytime soon. I wouldn't do that personally. I would maybe put one or two drops in there, okay, like that's not going anywhere for a long time. But when you're working on a nut, don't just booger the whole back of the thing with super glue and slam it in there. You're gonna regret it, okay? Because you won't be able to get it out. You want to be able to just tap it out sideways. Just take a little something and pop, you know, and it slides right up. Okay. It's like having an eraser. You don't throw away your eraser. Okay. Now, the thing is here's the other thing. Okay, you get your action, you get your bridge tuned in, you get the height set, you get your radius, you know, all that stuff. You come over here, you move your slot forward. I gotta find my tools here. I'll show you what I use for fretwork right here. Feeler gauges. Okay, feeler gauges. I talked about that before. Okay, this is they used to say Hobart. Okay, but it's a torch tip cleaner. It's a cheap type of nut slotting file. Torch tips cleaners. And you measure with this. Okay? You measure. You know, your strings, say you're running, like I run 56 to 12, okay? But that's thousands of an inch. Okay, 56 thousandths to 12 thousandths. That's 0.056, 0.012. Okay, thousandths of an inch. That's what you're measuring here. Okay, so you measure your string, or if you know what it is, okay, and then you measure this. You know, here's one of the torch tip cleaners. Okay, this is 54 thousandths. I don't know if one of my strings is 54 thousandths or not, but anyways, so you know that you're using the right size, and then you just go, if you can't get, if you don't have one here that's spot on, you just go a little bit bigger. Don't go smaller. Okay, go bigger on the fret file. Now, the thing is, okay, now let me explain this with the feeler gauges, okay? How deep do you slot a nut? A nut. How deep do you slot a nut? Okay, this is what you do. You get your action set up the way you want. There's no buzzing notes. You get it as low as you can, right? I mean, that's what people typically do. And you take a feeler gauge, okay, and you're going to take quite a few feeler gauges to try this, okay, but you fret at behind the first fret this way, towards the nut from the first fret. So you're fretting on that side of the first fret, the wrong side of the first fret. You fret on the wrong side of the first fret, and you come under this string on the second fret. Okay, you see how it's pushing up the string? I suppose you can't see this. This is too thick. That's too thick of a feeler gauge. You get the one. You just fan these out like this. Look for your floppy ones here. Okay. And I'm fretting on the wrong side of the first fret, and I'm coming under the second. See, you just want a little bit of drag. And take your time and figure out this angle this angle like this, okay? Because you're coming in, if you're going like this, you're gonna hit, and that might not be hitting. And you tip it a little bit this way, you know, you poke it under there a few times and figure out, you know, your angle, and you just want it to just drag a little bit. Okay, now that measurement is critical. You do that on all of them, or at least on this one and this one, so you can figure some kind of blend in between. Okay, but you know, in my case right here, I got about 5 or 6 thousandths clearance. Okay, so I got like a 5 or 6 thousandths feeler gauge. That's 0.006 right here. Okay, so I'm gonna pull a 7. Okay, I'm gonna pull out a 7 thousandths feeler gauge. I'm gonna put the 6 away. I know it's 6. Okay, I'm gonna pull out a 7 because I don't want this to cut these too deep. Okay, so now instead of fretting on the wrong side of the first, you fret on the wrong side of the second, or no, the right side of the first. You fret on the right side of the first. Did I say wrong side? That's the right side of the first fret. You fret on the wrong side of the second. Okay, and then you take that 7 thousandths feeler gauge, and you come onto the string here. Okay, it's not even touching. Okay, that means I can slack down. Okay, you just take off a little tiny bit at a time, and you keep checking. Do a lot of checking, and you get that so that's just dragging at 7 thousandths. Okay, now tuning. Okay, you have this hooked up to a tuner, and you know, if your slot is lower, your string isn't bending as much, so it's flatter. Okay, now if you start with the tuner before you even do any work on it, it's gonna be like, oh my gosh, they're all sharp. That's okay. The sharp you can do something about. Flat you can't do anything about, except for move the nut this way to make it sharp again. See, so I do that at first so everything is sharp, because as I'm dropping it down, it's becoming more flat. Well, the idea is getting it spot on, so it's spot on 1 semitone above the open string. But it's easier to do if you're starting out and everything's sharp. Okay, now when I get down to the end, okay, and I got these all at 7 thousandths, just barely dragging, you know, all the way across this, and it might be different for your setup. It depends on what you get here when you fret on the right side of the first fret and you're measuring under the second. Okay, because that's the measurement that you're gonna bring over to here when you fret here backwards on the wrong side of the second and measure under the first. You get what I'm saying? So you're gonna want to go 1,000th more to make sure that you don't go too low. Okay, if you want to go 2 thousandths too high or 3 thousandths too high, and get them all down to that first, and then go, okay, I gotta take a deep breath now, and I'm gonna shoot for another 1,000ths lower, or 2 thousandths lower. I'm gonna try to nail it spot on, and you take that feeler gauge. Okay, and now here's the thing. You get them all where you want them. You know, the depth. So the action's how you want it all the way. Everything's good, and everything's sharp. Okay, that's what you're shooting for. Get it at level where you want it, and all these notes are sounding sharp on the first fret. Okay, at least a little bit or right spot on. Okay, I got one that's like right on. Okay, that's fine. Okay, you don't have to tune that one. And now this is what I use here. Okay, this is a file. I think it's a jeweler's file. I got it, I think, off grizzly.com. And it's a jeweler's file. It's like bent like this, and it's like a single cut, a fine single cut like this. Okay. Now what I do, okay, this sharp, this is say all this note. You can see actually. I don't know if you can see it or not. This string, what most people would think of as the B string here. Okay, the second one up. You see how that's back further than the other ones? I don't know if you can see it or not. That's what I do is I take this, okay, and I push the string out of the way. I can push the string out of the way like this. See how I got that string out of the way? Right there. And I come in here like this, right, with this file. And I'm filing the front of the nut back. See, yeah, you're just kind of twitching. You're just kind of twitching and filing, filing, and filing, and filing. And then you keep pushing the string back. You do some filing on that. You push the string back in, and you measure it. Okay, it's still sharp. Pull the string out of there, and come back with the file. So what you end up with is like a stepped nut. You know, like an acoustic, like an acoustic bridge. Sometimes they'll have steps in them, just like your intonation steps. You know, like these aren't all in the same spot. You know, they're staggered. That's how the nut ends up. When you have it tweaked in just right, you know it's tweaked in right when you do it that way. And then everything is exactly one semitone by your very accurate tuner. Okay, that's the best I can explain this. Okay, it's better to have everything a little bit sharp than have everything a little bit flat. Well, if it's flat, you just do like I said, and you just shave off the front of the nut slot towards the frets, that side of the nut slot. You shave that off, and then you don't have to file down your nut blank as much. It'll fit in there. But the thing is you get that front edge this way, so everything's sharp, and then you get something like this, a little jeweler's file, like this, off grizzly.com or whatever, you know. You can find one like that. And then too, I also use an X-Acto blade, because this thing will only file down so far on the nut, and then I got to take an X-Acto and I come up under here, and I have to like just push the blade sideways across the material, and it shaves it, you know, and you just shave that bottom a little bit, okay, you know, so that you can get back in there with this thing, okay, with this. And that's how you do it, and you end up with kind of a step nut, but you know, everything sounds good.